Yeah, I'm trying to relate it to the marine industry rather than just solar panels or solar energy in general, because that's another topic altogether to take all day. So anyway, this picture, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but I've been watching it for the last 10 minutes. And the idea was, two things that really light the sun, a tan girl, and in the background, in case you haven't noticed, there's some solar panels over here. But it seemed like pretty poor analogy, but let's just go with it. Anyway, so we're going to start with a review of solar energy in general, and then as it evolves and what we use in the marine industry today. And as we go along, we'll find that the cruising sailboat is probably the most recognizable use of solar panels, but it's used in all kinds of other applications in the marine industry. You mentioned commercial vessels. Denmark, by the year of 2030, will have built this totally solar cruise ship. They're going crazy, by the way. They've got solar islands out in the North Sea, and they're kind of all hung up on this green stuff. I don't know why. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, it's been going on for a long time, a lot longer than most of us think. At least I thought it was a relatively new technology, but there you go. In 1839, this guy came up, wasn't very efficient, but he came up with electricity. Back then they used selenium. Silicon just wasn't thought of for a number of years. But anyway, that's when it all started, and just a young kid came up with this stuff. I'm briefly going to put you through decades of the way it was developed. I'll leave it up there for a few seconds so you can kind of glass through it. A lot of names starting out with in the 1800s don't mean anything to you. But it was, you can see that a lot of physicists, and mostly in Europe, the French and the German were really cranked up on this, spent a lot of time on it. You'll notice in 1905, there's a name you recognize, Einstein, and then he got a Nobel Prize for it in 1921. They figured he probably invented it over a cup of coffee or something, would scribble something down. And what next? Yeah, this was a bit of a big development to era. In 1954, Bell Labs announces the invention of the first practical solar cell. And they were working on it for NASA, for the space industry. So that kind of influx got enabled solar energy production to really take off. So that's where it started, and then they used it in a couple of the spacecraft initially. They weren't very efficient. Well, you can see that 9% efficient, but it was enough to get these things self-sufficient as they orbited the Earth. Then you get into the 60s. Again, it's more the first manned spacecraft to be powered by solar cells. The space industry really spurred on the development, and it was mostly efficiency, space, and weight, and it's still that way today. That's the way the industry is kind of going, and this is a good example right here. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, there's more people getting involved in it. Getting the efficiency was a big deal at that point. They weren't for public consumption, they weren't too concerned about space and weight. It was more about efficiency. That panel there That's a 200-watt panel. It weighs about 8 pounds. If you were to get that in a crystalline solar panel that you put on your roof, it will weigh about 40 pounds. So that's how far they've come down. And it's the same efficiency, pretty much the same size. It's just, that's the way it's going. I got that in my car. I just folded it up and put it in the back seat. And I'm done. Yeah, just going on to 20% efficiency and just keep cranking it up. '90s, more of the same, 15% thin film cells, similar to that, but not with the materials that's used in that. And here's how the growth went from 202 to 210. And you can see how the second line down there is the Chinese. In Taiwan, they were going crazy. They still are. Here's some names you might recognize. Really started to take off. New record achieved 208. The solar cell efficiency, Department of Energy. And then, of course, Barack Obama installed one in the White House. Of course. Yeah, the Australians were big on this, have been for a while. And you can see where the Germans and the French have pushed the technology and used it a lot. We're kind of still catching up to these guys, but we've got some big plans. 2030 seems to be a date that's set for a lot of people to really increase the output. We're talking about putting square miles of these things in the deserts, in these solar ponds where wastewater from the plants is just sitting there, and they'll put floating devices, and then they just mount the panels on the floating devices. But they just go for forever. I mean, reservoirs, waste ponds, that type of thing. And that seems to be, like I said, by 2030, there's all kinds of people putting billions of dollars into this solar development in the United States. We're catching up. Denmark, as I mentioned before, well, by 2030, they want to be totally, not 20, a little longer than that, they want to be totally off the grid. The houses, everything, no more carbon footprints whatsoever. So that's where they're going.
That microphone go out.
We can't hear you. You can't hear me? Yeah. That better?
No.
I think the battery's gone.
Oh,
James,
I'll speak a little louder.
That's Tom. That's the battery.
Yeah, charge it up.
Charge it up. Yeah.
Speak up, that's all.
By the way, these silicon panels have been around for a while. They guarantee them for 25 years. And this is what this kind of shown here. It's, we're going to start recycling them, and there's a lot of them out there. It's a bit of a problem at the moment.
How are they recycling them?
Sorry?
How are they going to recycle them?
I'm not sure. At first, I read that they were just going to go into wasteland, and then somebody has come up with the idea that they can recycle them. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, and there's tons of them around. I mean, it goes from, I think there's like 10,000 tons already, and there's gonna be 75,000 tons by 2030. So that 25-year cycle is coming to an end. And the 25 years doesn't mean it's a throwaway device. It just loses its efficiency.
There you
That's worse.
Yeah. By the way, these panels are not rugged. As the, there you go. Thank you.
Very much, thank you, just one.
Yeah. There you go.
go.
They're not quite as rugged as the rigid ones. Simply because they're a little more delicate. You get a 5-year warranty on these ones and a 25-year on the rigid ones. And the rigid ones, let's face it, you're gonna mount it out of the way, either on the davit or on the platform across the deck. Whereas these are just gonna lay down on the deck, and so you can step on them and things can fall on them. So there were, they say don't step on them. We don't recommend that you step on them, but if you put them in places where you can, you know it will happen. And while we're talking about this, the mounting, they will say, look, just get some silicone adhesive, lay it down and stick it on the deck. And then they say, well, you really should have a space between it and the deck so it's working more efficiently. So then you got to build some kind of at least a border around it, or partially around it, to allow some air to get underneath it. To be as efficient as it should be, let's put it that way. 2020. This perovskite crystal on top of a textured panel, that's where we are with this thing. They've done away with silicon. And then come up with these crystals that they just lay on plastic, and it's a very, very thin film. I'm not sure how the process works, but it works. And there's a number of there's a number of crystals that the manufacturers have used to try and increase the efficiency. They're all pretty much the same. So this is just one of the crystals that they use, and they just lay it on plastic and then plastic over top of it, and that's what you got. Yeah, that's what we've got. Transparent solar panels. Yeah, paper thin organic photovoltaics. They actually are making, and they've made windows that of photocells that are in use already, and it's about 90% transparent, but you can get the photovoltaic properties from it. It's still a bit in the research stage, but like I said, I think in Europe, a few of the buildings, probably government buildings, have installed these clear plastic panels. I think I've got a picture of one here, I'm not sure. Yeah, this is how it's changed a little bit from what previously to 22. US has caught up a little bit, and so has the rest of the world. China's got these huge solar fields, like square miles of solar panels that they're using, and they're cheap. They're made in China. I'm going to tell you. Hang on. Okay. Just a brief summary. It started in 1839, and then in 1883, some physicists in New York came up with this, which is wasn't very efficient, but it was the first use of solar panels in the U.S. And then again, Bell Labs for the space industry. Shortage of petroleum spurred the growth. And then the industry, as I said, has been focusing on efficiency, reducing size and the cost. And they're pretty reasonable. This is a 2,000 watt panel. It's $300. That's just a panel. Then you've got to get your controller, voltage controller. It's basically just a voltage regulator and an inverter, and you're in business. So for us, if that's all you wanted for a sailboat, we'll get back into that a little bit. You can get into having solar energy on your boat for about $1,000. That's not bad. It depends on the size of the boat and the amount of use, but I'm just thinking 40-foot sailboat, a 50-foot sailboat's gonna have a generator, we don't give a damn. But a 40-foot sailboat, 200 to 300 watts is about all you need to run everything on that boat. Yeah, and this is the 200 watt. You know, so typically, because you can mount them anywhere, these are a bit of excessive, but this is the rigid type. If you've got any kind of reasonable sturdy bimini, you can get 3 100 watt panels, and they only weigh 4 pounds apiece, and mount them on your bimini, and then run the wiring inside, and then you're pretty much good for anything. There we go. Repeating myself. Easier to install, but less durable. I said 1 to 5, but it's basically 5. There you go. Printed on a plastic sheet that's only 0.8 or 0.5 millimeter. Making it very flexible and ideal for marine industry, where you can't get a flat surface, which is pretty much a sailboat. Yeah. These are the other alternatives to the crystalline silicon cells. And I can't even cadmium, telluride, copper, and barium, gallium. I don't even know what these crystals are, but they can be used to produce the flexible solar cell. Solar windows. There's one up in the corner there they've gotten better than that. It comes with a frame, an aluminum frame, and the solar cells tie into the frame, and that becomes your source of energy. But they're almost, it's just a little hazy. You can't really tell you've got something going on there. I mean, obviously it's you can see where the panels, at least you can in that, but you can't actually see that it's a solar panel itself. You just see where the panels should be. And the other one's solar blinds, solar shingles. If you don't like the look of the panel, you can put solar shingles on your house. I think Mr. Tesla has cornered that market pretty good. Solar roads, yeah. And again, the floating solar, it's just solar panels on a floating platform. The platform just provides a space to put the panels on, and the wastewater from the plants is a perfect place for it, because it's close to where they can put this the power back into the grid. And so this is a popular place to see a lot of solar panels floating on a pond, as they call it. And obviously it's got to be semi-protected water. They can't put it in the ocean. It's basically reservoirs are good. anywhere where you're not gonna get any wave action. You'll find these things. Yeah. And yeah. What they've been working on for 10 years is it's not a new idea. Getting into a series of these the solar panels up in space. I mean, might be 10 of them, huge panels, connecting them together, and then beaming them back down to the Earth. And then the thoughts are, this could be used in a very nasty way. But there's somebody going to send one up next year to demonstrate that it can work. They won't be obviously powerful enough to be any use, but it will. The idea that it actually works will have been proven. He's looking for some money. I'm surprised Mr. Musk hasn't gotten them found in that.
So they're gonna beam the energy generated by the
solar panel.
base
Yeah,
back to Earth.
yeah,
How are they not gonna have energy loss out of that?
pretty cool. Well, you got the 24 hours of sunlight. Start out with, and put enough of them up there. The logistics of and the costs are pretty crazy, but they're working on.
Wow.
We briefly talked about this. How many do you need? And again, I'm thinking of the average cruising boat. If you get above 50 feet, let me back up a little bit. If you call any manufacturer and say, I've got a 40-foot sailboat, I want my fridge to work, I want my microwave to work, I want this and that and that, and that, got all these lights. They will add up they'll do all the math for you and tell you exactly what you need. They'll sell you a kit. Here's the panels, here's the controller, here's the inverter. Just go at it. Yeah.
See, John Coley is with all that around the world stuff. They've been incorporating solar panels into sales. So they've been, we targeting without any. They're not having a motor.
I can't, you hear that?
No.
Solar sail. The sail fabric. Oh, yeah,
Sale fabric
yeah,
through, Old Coley is, John Coley is.
yeah. There's a big 400-foot cruise ship already out there. It's 3-masted and the sails are all solar. And the boat is probably about 50% solar. Yeah, the manufacturer you call them up. If you bring up solar panels on your computer, the first thing is all the manufacturers, the 10 best, it's some story. The first thing they say is, no, call us. Tell us what you need, and we'll provide you with a system that'll work for your boat and your intended needs. Yeah, I always think of the guy at anchor, swinging around, and he's probably the most practical use of needing solar panels on his boat. And when these guys figure this all out, they figure, you're going to get sun 8 hours a day or whatever. You don't take into account the fact the boat's swinging all over the place, the boom and the sails and whatever are making it less efficient. So they may say you need 300 watts, but depending on where you're sailing, what time of the year you're sailing, you may need 400 watts. So they kind of factor that into the system. So you can get an easy upgrade. And that's pretty much it for the use in the marine industry.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah,
how do these, I guess, we always know that they work with lead acid or AGM or.
they're pretty much lithium.
Are they lithium?
Lithium, yeah, that's what they're kind of saying you should be using with these things. And they say 100 watt panel will keep your one Series 31 lithium battery phosphate charged up. If you're going to go with 2 or 3, then figure you need 2 or 300 watts.
Okay.
A rule of thumb, yeah.
All I have to do is we'll charge regularly.
You have to tell them that you're hooking it up to a lithium battery, and they'll supply the DSM, I guess, for that.
Yeah.
Regulated.
Oh. Well, any questions? Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah.